I was at a lodge with my family over Thanksgiving, and I was watching my uncles, who are like between 50 and 70 years old, play with my cousins, who were like 2 to 6 year old boys. And as they were playing Monster, and they were chasing each other around, and one of them was like being a monster, chasing the little kids. And the other one was like making funny faces, and the kids would run away. And several times in there, they pushed it a little too far and either got really close to the kids melting down, or the kids actually melted down and started crying because the monster intensity had gotten to be too much. And it got me thinking about growing up and how most of the time that I played with my cousins, it ended in either somebody getting hurt, either emotionally, their feelings hurt, or physically hurt, like bonking into a door, or an adult telling us to settle down. And they would either tell us to settle down as a warning, or if we didn't heed that warning, it would be like, time out, you're in trouble. And it got me thinking about dog play and dog fights and how dogs interact. So what I'm saying is that when I learned how to monitor the intensity of my play and how my behavior was being perceived by other kids, it was either through pushing it until it fell apart, like the wheels fell off and somebody got hurt, or an adult manufacturing an interruption that I was not giving our play, or we were not giving our play, to teach us where it should be. So like, you're getting too wound up, you need to calm down a little bit. And that's pretty much exactly how we do it with dogs too. I get that question a lot, like after I talked about evaluating dog greetings and assessing if dog play or dog interactions are not going well, what do you do about it if it's not going well? And it's basically the same as you would do, or I learned how to play. And to shoot straight, it is just matching you with appropriate playmates, or interrupting it to manufacture the interruptions that are not happening in the play, or tone down the energy level that is not happening between the people playing. And by interruption, I don't mean stopping it. I mean putting in a pause that there should be. So it doesn't mean that you're separating the two dogs forever. It means that you're doing something when dogs are interacting, like walking in between them, or calling them away from play, or distracting them with something, or if you have to, physically separating them, either by like pushing them off one another with your legs gently, or by pulling your dog out of play, sometimes by their collar. And that would mean your dog has to be comfortable being handled by the collar. I do not advise doing this with other dogs. I advise using your legs to interact with dogs that are not yours, and only doing this with your dog if your dog is comfortable being handled by you. And I should say, if your dog is not comfortable being handled by you, you probably should not be going to dog parks, because that's just a place where you can show your dog all that it's capable of not having to listen to you. What I mean by handling your dog, and what my puppy class is heavily weighed on, is that you can approach your dog without your dog moving away from you, which is like essential off-leash skill. If you move towards your dog, they don't juke you, run away, avoid you, and that you could physically touch your dog. So if you can't do those two things, I would really advise working on those two things before you start going to the dog park, both because you need those things for just having your dog come when called, but also because the dog park, or any off-leash experience now, is just going to be an exercise in your dog figuring out how sluggish, awkward, slow you are, and how close you can get before you touch them or catch them, and how much they can do to avoid you. So that covers interruptions, just how to put a pause in the play that is not happening, or a break in the interaction that brings down the energy level. And if you're doing this to teach your dog how to interact better, to teach your dog to put those pauses in, you're usually doing this a lot. So if you feel like you're exhausted because you're racing around after your dog during off-leash interactions, constantly interrupting them out of play, and it's just like overwhelming and you feel like that's all you do, gold star to you, you are teaching your dog social skills. And that's what, in daycares, that's what we do all day. Like, we get dogs in who just uncontrollably zoom around or just play relentlessly and have no monitor, and that puts them in a dangerous position. And this is almost every young or adolescent dog. And our job is just to focus on that dog, and there's just somebody who follows that dog around and interrupts it over and over and over again. And if necessary, gives them little like naps or breaks if they're really getting overwhelmed or just physically tired. So the second one is picking your playmates. So if we're thinking of dog language as like a lexicon of phrases or words that your dog needs to know to be fluent in dog, then you want to pick dogs that are good at speaking dog for your dog to interact with. And also you want to pick dogs that facilitate healthy interactions. So firstly, dogs that are good at, there's like a bunch of ways I could say how a dog is good at dog, but that would normally constitute a dog who has a large repertoire of behaviors, and the behaviors like escalate in a clear way. So that would mean it goes from like one signal to the next signal to the next signal. Just like I would go, oh, hey, not into that. Okay, really, that's enough. All right, seriously, stop, dude. Enough. That is me escalating my signals. And you would see the same thing for dog behavior, but of course it'd be a lot of ways I could escalate it, body language wise, for me and for a dog, that I can't go into. So things might be like the dog freezes, the dog puts his hackles up, the dog snarls, the dog muzzle checks another dog, and then the dog goes off. But the end, whatever it is the dog goes off. And I should also say that generally dog parks and dog daycares have a bit of a mosh pity feel, and the dogs are used to dogs being friendly and comfortable. So if your dog is not great at the escalated behavior, that's okay. Dogs that are really good at clear communication don't always like that mosh pity environment, because it's like this ambiguous, random free love, everybody interacting with each other randomly. The other thing is you want to pick playmates that facilitate a healthy interaction. So just because it's not a dangerous interaction doesn't mean it's healthy. So like one dog obsessively targeting another dog and trying to get that dog to play, or obsessively targeting a dog to hump it, is one I really see commonly. That's not really teaching the dog humping any great behaviors besides obsessively follow this dog around and hump it, and you will be able to, and that'll be wonderful, and you don't have to learn any play skills. And also it's not very much fun for the dog being humped, obviously, because all they do is walk around getting a dog humping them all day. So, and another thing would be just dogs that aren't hitting it off. Your dog's not going to get along with everybody. So you want to pick playmates that, not that your dog always hits it off with, but that don't put your dog into a bad pattern of like following this dog around and getting into it with this dog. And usually when there's that kind of a situation, it takes two to tango, even if it doesn't seem that way. So frequently you'll have one dog that's sort of seems afraid of a dog or uncomfortable with the dog, and they have the whole world of space, but they seem to end up finding each other, and it's not just the dog that's kind of seems to be doing the aggression, but both dogs. So it's like, how do you guys, you got the whole world, why you end up, oh, it's a weird thing. And you want to interrupt that too. Or maybe even separate those two dogs. Another thing to keep in mind here is, just like when I would play with my cousins and we would tip over into somebody getting hurt, that's what'll happen with your dogs. So puppies always do this. Every time puppies interact, if you don't interrupt it, somebody yelps, somebody hides under a chair, somebody gets into a little scuffle, and that's how they learn how far to push it, is by pushing it too far over and over and over again. And I would say this is pretty normal. You see this with people, like kids do this all the time on the playground. Then you see like teenagers and college students, guys playing touch football and getting into a fight, or somebody having to storm off and pout or whatever it is. So it continues all the way into adulthood, and when hopefully you've learned enough social skills to not get into that situation, or you just hold a lot of resentment and go home and drink and binge watch TV shows. If your dog, without interruption, pushes it too far, totally normal, especially for dogs like under the age of 3. And really, especially for puppies, that'll happen every time. And it's not entirely bad if it does happen, if you're matching your dog with suitable playmates who give clear signals and who are not going to hurt each other if it breaks out into a dog fight. Which, again, ritualized aggression, snarling at each other, dog fights, very normal part of the lexicon of dog behavior. Does not mean you want to have that happen, but it means your dog's totally normal if that does happen, provided that's not all your dog is doing. It took 25 years for my parents to teach me not to push it too far with my cousins, by either letting me push it too far and having everything fall apart and then feeling bad, or them constantly interrupting me to stop us all from pushing it too far. It's gonna take like 2 years of you doing this with your dog for your dog to either figure out through match playmates, appropriate match playmates, what behaviors push it too far and catching themselves before it goes south, or you interrupting them enough to teach them the moments when it's getting to be too far, and manufacturing an interruption that your dog can then learn from for its future experience.